The period between 1800 and 1870 was a time of significant change and upheaval in Africa. This period saw the end of the transatlantic slave trade and the beginning of European colonization of the continent. It was a time of great hardship and suffering for many Africans, but it was also a time of resistance and resilience, as African peoples struggled to assert their independence and sovereignty in the face of European aggression. In the early 1800s, many European countries, particularly Britain and France, began to turn their attention to Africa as a source of raw materials, markets, and strategic advantage. European explorers and missionaries began to penetrate the interior of the continent, mapping the terrain and establishing contacts with local leaders and communities. At the same time, the transatlantic slave trade, which had been a major source of wealth and power for European countries for centuries, began to decline. In 1807, Britain abolished the slave trade, and other European countries soon followed suit. This marked a major turning point in African history, as the trade in human beings had been a major factor in the continent's underdevelopment and exploitation. However, the end of the slave trade did not bring an end to European exploitation of Africa. Instead, European countries began to focus on other forms of exploitation, such as resource extraction and colonization. European powers established formal colonies in Africa, carving up the continent into spheres of influence and asserting control over African peoples and resources. Despite these challenges, many Africans resisted European colonization and exploitation. Some leaders, such as Ethiopia's Emperor Menelik II, were able to successfully resist European encroachment and maintain their independence. Others, such as the Zulu people of South Africa, engaged in fierce resistance to European colonization. Throughout the 1800s, African peoples also began to forge new identities and alliances as they sought to assert their independence and sovereignty in the face of European aggression. Pan-Africanism, a movement to promote solidarity and unity among African peoples, emerged during this time, as did other movements for independence and self-determination. In conclusion, the period between 1800 and 1870 was a time of significant change and upheaval in Africa. It marked the end of the transatlantic slave trade and the beginning of European colonization of the continent. Despite the challenges and hardships of this period, African peoples demonstrated remarkable resilience and resistance as they fought to assert their independence and sovereignty in the face of European aggression. This period set the stage for the struggles for independence and self-determination that would come later in the 20th century.